And there we go. Hopefully everyone can hear that. So, first of all, welcome, Rich from Richmond Gaming, as always. This is our first ever live stream on YouTube. So we're trying something a little bit different tonight. We've got a panel discussion going. We'll introduce our panelists in a moment. Just some housekeeping. If you do have any questions, just ask them in the chat. I've got the chat window open. I can see that there. Feel free to chirp in. We will have a section dedicated at the end, so if we don't answer them straight away, just bear with us, we'll get back. Also, hang around until the end of this video, because we're going to be making an announcement about a special upcoming giveaway that we're going to be running coming the 1st of June, so make sure you stick around for that. So, first time doing this, but we are going to unmute ourselves on our call. We're going to move over to our panel discussion, and bear with me 1 second because, as expected, there we go. Now we can see Quinn as well. Perfect. Excellent. Guys, how are you all doing?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Very well, thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing good. Almost Friday.
It is almost Friday, isn't it? Like that's the big one. That is the big one. Nate, obviously you're a little bit further behind the rest of us, just for time difference, nothing else. But
Yep.
so you have that little bit longer to wait. But guys, do you want to start by introducing yourself? Because I'm sure a lot of people will have played games with you, maybe heard your voices, maybe seen your written word in some form or another. But Jacob, do you want to start with just introducing yourself?
Well, I'm Jacob. You might know me from the Xavier Protocol blog or the Danger Room podcast. I've been putting out content pretty much as long as the game's been going.
Excellent. Nate, do you want to go next, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. I am Nate from the Gamers Guild. I've been making YouTube videos about as long as since the game has been announced and all that kind of stuff. Everything from reviews, battle reports, all the fun stuff.
Excellent. Thank you for that, and thank you for joining us, Nate, as well. Darren.
Hiya, I'm Darren, also known as the Wargaming Dad. You'll all have seen or heard me chatting on TTS. I'm a regular judge on the TTS finals, and I just can't wait to get back to actually rolling dice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that sentiment is the same for everyone. And last but by no means least, because I did have to remind him that he won one of the mini leagues in between, Quinn.
Well, mate, I just win so many of them, obviously. I'm Quinn. I'm just some pleb that plays this game. Not got anything fancy like the rest of these folk.
Oh, do not. I'm here to steal Quinn's tactics before our match tomorrow, Re7 says Quinn. So yeah, maybe just be careful about what you give away there. Well, guys, to the four of you, thank you so much for joining us on this. This is the first time we've done, or I've done something like this. Sorry, I've made some YouTube videos. I've got myself into a bit of a hole trying to make a battle report that some of you may have seen a sneak preview of. I'm about 30 hours in now, and I was nine minutes worth of footage. So I'm going to finish it. I've learnt a lot along the way, but first time doing anything live on YouTube. I did used to stream games over on Twitch, but I have moved fully over to YouTube now. So the idea behind these is for four experienced players and me to have some discussions around different aspects of the game. And I thought, where better to start this week than with the first thing that I think stumbles a lot of new players and some more experienced players is roster building. And I think a lot of people come into the game having played other tabletop miniatures games, and I think the roster building piece, at least for me with the games I've played, is really the one part that is very, very different to anything else out there. You've almost got a hell of a lot of pre-work to do beforehand to try and accommodate for a whole bunch of different scenarios and things that you can't always accommodate for. So I thought it would be a good starting point in our first one of these sessions to kind of go through the panel, discuss your own personal tactics when you're building a roster, what you look for in terms of the characters that you take, what you look for in terms of then the tactics cards, and then lastly, and I think the one that maybe gets overlooked a little bit by newer players, then the crisis cards that you're going to take along with it. So, Jacob, do you want to start and just sort of give us your lowdown of like how you would approach a new roster?
Sure. So the first thing I decide is what affiliation I want it to be. I normally start there, and that might be a number of things that draw me there. Maybe it's got a brand new release I want to try out. Maybe it's got a really powerful character or set of characters that I'm drawn to. Maybe there's just like it's my favorite character and I want to or it's something I haven't played in a while. But affiliation is normally where I start. And then I start thinking, right, what is it that this affiliation does that I can't do anywhere else? What is their unique, what's really good about them? So things like Black Order, just great at murdering things, pulling them in and murdering things. Or something like Cabal have got really good power generation. Or something like X-Men have their place effects have got some really interesting round one plays that they can do. So what is it that is unique or good about them? And then I'll start thinking, right, how can I work with that? Typically, my first point is actually to go to the crises and think about what secures and what extracts do I think are going to work well with them. And there's some really well-established ones. You know, if you're taking Wakanda, then you know Gamma Waves is a great crisis for you to take with them. I think is well established. And sometimes, you know, online forum can be really good for that. Discord servers or Facebook groups, or even there's a Reddit going and posting up there going, hey guys, what does, looking at playing in the Inhumans, what kind of crises do they like? And I think I would go there first and think about what crises do people think they're good, or do I think it's good on them? And what pieces do I need to then include to help leverage that? Is there any particular round one plays in particular that I'm going to need particular pieces or crisis cards for, and then looking at including those into my roster. Once I've got a basic outline, okay, well, if I win priority, I'm going to play this crisis, and I'm going to try and run this plan, or I'm going to take this secure instead of an extract, and I'm going to do this if I like my matchup there. Or if I don't get priority, then maybe here's my plan for extracts and here's my plan for secure. So I start thinking around the crises to start with. Once I've got my core of a plan, then I'm thinking about building it out. So I've got my core that I'm going to take, and then I go, great, well, if that's my core, what else do I need to add to get it up to 15 threat, and then 16, and down to 14, and up to 20? So going through those, that's sort of scaling that core that I've got for the crisis that does the job I want to do, and thinking about what are the options I can bring which are going to augment that, or support that, or do it even more. And finally, the last step for me is normally tactics cards. Maybe there's some that I've already put in. Maybe there's a really powerful affiliation card, which is a dead cert. But then I'm thinking about how can I get synergies going? How can I get, if I've got lots of high threat, powerful pieces, how can I get the most out of them? How can I be positioning them or protecting them so that they're going to be available and doing what I want them to do? That's roughly the arc I go through when I'm building a roster.
No, it's really good. Sorry, I'm just turning my fan off because I can hear it picking up on my mic. Yeah, I think it's probably it's quite a different approach to mine, I think. But Quinn, what about you? Me and you have spoke tactics. We usually have a game that takes about an hour and a half because we beat the living daylights out of each other, and then spend 2 hours talking about, you know, the roster we've got and everything else. So what about you? What's the sort of number one priority for you in terms of roster building?
So I'd say my number one priority usually is just picking whatever character it is I'm interested in playing at that moment and just going, I want to do this. How do I do this? And then just usually I'll go through, you know, if they're not already an affiliation leader or I don't have an idea about that, go to affiliation, similar to Jacob. Then characters, then I stumble about in tactics cards for like forever because I'll get about 4 of them and then I'll look at the other 4 and go, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. So after I've stumbled through that, I'll then get to crises, and I tend to favour crises that kind of pen you in a bit, just because I am more of a brawly player. I do like beating the crap out of people, it's just what I do best. And then from there, yeah, that's pretty much my entire process.
Just a clarification there for anyone watching. Quinn is speaking exclusively about Marvel Crisis Protocol, not his Saturday nights out. No, that's really good. Darren, what about you? What are you looking at when you first when you first sort of approach a new roster? Say for like, I mean, we've just started season 5, right? So what's the process you went through when you sat down and looked at that?
Well, originally I was playing Brotherhood from release because I was like excited because I love Magneto and it was just like he was just a powerhouse. I love like Quinn. I love to like just smash face. I'm not always about the crisis. I just rather KO you. So like I this season I've actually gone for Black Order and Brotherhood. So it's just all about destroying people. So like my everything from my crisis down to can I kill you and can I kill you quicker?
It definitely resonates with my gameplay. I am a Brotherhood 9-point Thanos roster at the moment, which is is all about that. And lastly, then Nate, what about you? How are you approaching a new roster nowadays?
Very similar to Jacob and his style. I kind of pick an affiliation that I want to be able to build around, get synergies in there. So Jacob talked about like if you're looking at the Cabal, they have great power generation. So who could fit with great power generation, whether because they have a beam attack and they're able to generate even more power, or just somebody who's a little bit more power hungry. You can do the same with like Avengers and be like, cool, who has reactive powers that I can really just break with Captain America's leadership ability, and go on and on with that. But you can also absolutely just build around a singular character, because there are some characters I think in this game that you kind of build around them. So you can take Thanos into Spider Foes, but really it's a Thanos list that has the Spider Foe leadership. Same thing with now this Mr. Sinister out and his 2 tactic cards that bring in another character. There's just so many different ways to approach it, but my personal way is definitely to get the affiliation locked down, maybe get half the characters, get an idea of what I'm going for, pick the crisis, and then fill in the tactic cards and the rest of the crisis or character cards with that.
So let's talk about tactics cards then for a little bit, because I think I remember playing my first ever game, and I think Jacob, it was reading the article you'd put together. Does everyone remember the good old days where we had drop off? And it was the Cabal list with Venom and Ultron on one side of the map, Red Skull and MODOK on the other, and just you had that sort of wide arc. And so I knew what characters I was going to take. I knew which crises I wanted to take. But even back then, the tactics cards was the one bit that really got me. Like, and it's not that it's a lack of choice. It's there is a huge amount of tactics cards out there you can take, and I think only 8 into 5 does limit you a lot, which is an element I really like. But in the tactics, do you have your, have you got your set 2-3 cards that you take for almost every roster? Do they mix in and out depending on what you're taking? Darren, do you want to give us your thoughts on the tactics cards?
Yeah, well, the tactics cards, especially when you first start, there's something that you almost overlook. And you got them in your hand, and when you're first starting to learn, it's really hard to concentrate on the board and think about these extra cards that can really change the game. But yeah, it depends on the roster really, because every roster is different, and having a different tactic card, say in Web Warriors, you're probably always wanting advanced R&D, because around one play, you want that as extra powers on Venom, Miles, Gwen. It's totally game changing. But like in a Brotherhood roster, you don't need advanced R&D. You've got it on hand. So you could use it for stuff, obviously, but you have got it there as an option already. So to me, I wouldn't take it in a Brotherhood roster.
And I already love how the first statement about a particular card had 2 people nodding and 2 people shaking their head, which is one of the things I love about this game, but also one of the reasons why it's quite difficult to get into it from that side.
Jacob saying I was wrong.
No, absolutely. And Jacob, what about you? Obviously, you've wrote a lot about tactics cards and spoke about them in the past, but what are your thoughts on it?
So I think you're nearly always going to run one affiliated card. Some affiliations really want to run two, like Asgard really wants to play both of their affiliated cards. They're amazing, and most Asgard lists will start with, okay, well these two cards are going straight in there, and they nearly always make your 5 that you play on the table. So I think one thing to do is to look at what are the affiliated cards in my affiliation, and you're probably going to include at least one of them in your roster, maybe 2, depending on maybe if you're going dual affiliation, you've probably got 1 from each. So affiliated card is where I would start. The next thing I would think about is restricted cards. If you're not already aware, then on the AMG website, under the organised play section, they have a list of cards that are restricted. Some of them that have even been banned. So there's 2 cards that have been banned so far, but otherwise, a number of cards have been identified as powerful or maybe overly used, and you can take at most 2 of those. Now, those cards generally are very powerful. So one of the things AMG have said is that one of the functions of the restricted list is to identify to newer players, go and have a look at this card and figure out what's going on. Go and ask someone about this and say, why is this on the restricted list? That can be a really useful point for you to start. So thinking about what are your 2 restricted cards going to be. Once you've got to that point, you're then starting to think, well, hang on, I've got 3 or 4 of my cards already locked up. What I would say is you're looking for things which are going to be force multipliers, which are either going to make your characters much harder to take off the board, or which are going to make their activations much more effective. So a personal favorite of mine is climbing gear. When you've got a big character, being able to move them in, essentially it gives them an extra attack because you're moving them in, getting them into range for an attack, and making an attack. Someone like a She-Hulk or a Magneto or even a Thanos can really, like, Kingpin's another great example. Characters who've got good attacks on them, who don't have great mobility, that's kind of a staple card for me. But you need to, it's a really iterative thing. You've got to make a list and play it and go, I didn't play this card. Why is this card here? Or I've played a bunch of games with my roster and I've never chosen this card. I've never brought this into my 5. What's it doing in my 8? I like the idea of it, but is it actually making the grade? Just going back to what Darren said about when you're first getting into the game, I remember when I was first learning the game, if I was lucky, I played 2 of my tactics cards. So now it's usually if I don't play all my cards, there's a good reason for why one hasn't been played. Sometimes that character's been deleted early because of a mistake or something. But when you've learned the game a lot more, you'll find yourself using the cards more. You'll be aware of them and you'll be more prepared to use them. So if you're not using your cards, that's normal.
Yeah, I agree. The number of times where I finished a game when I first started playing, you look down and you go, yeah, I could have. And then you start thinking back. But Nate, what about you? Jumping on the cards, the restricted cards that Jacob mentioned there, I think I'd never actually thought about it in that way of like it's almost a signal for new players to like, yeah, go and look at that because there's something going on there. What are the cards that you tend to look at from that restricted list in particular?
So the red flags for me, and granted, all of them are very powerful that are on the restricted list as it is. But the ones that definitely stand out as kind of like, like, why was this restricted? Are Doom Prophecy and All You've Got. Because at first glance, if you don't play these on the right characters, the downsides of these cards are massive. One of them will daze or just straight up KO the character you use it on, which is, bad when maybe a quarter or a fifth of your team just suddenly disappears because of a card you played. And then Doom Prophecy, not rolling physical defense dice for the rest of the game is really not great. But when you start searching for basically certain combinations of characters with cards, like these characters that are able to get off multiple physical attacks and really abuse Doom Prophecy, those are the kind of conversations that I think Jacob's talking about, where when a newer player is like, hey, like, why is this good? And you're like, cool, well, let's talk about Black Widow real quick. And then you kind of are able to go down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. And Quinn, what about you? As I say, we've always come up with some weird and wonderful combinations, and I know you are as guilty as me for getting to the end of a game and going, yeah, I didn't play them. But what about you? What do you look for in tactics cards?
So what I tend to gravitate towards in terms of tactics cards is things that I know are you almost always going to be solid during pretty much every game. I'm not like a big combo player in that sense. I tend to go for things like med pack is something that almost always makes it into my list because spending 2 to heal 3 is just so good every game. Um, Also things along the lines of like I think one of the big offenders that isn't on the list right now is I've forgotten what it's called. Bitter Rivals. There we go. I know card names. Um, like the fact that that is has a duality to it of being both an offensive and defensive card in the sense of reducing your opponent's attacks whilst empowering your own. I think some going for things like that that are versatile in a sense is what I lean towards. Just always being able to play a card is something that I value a lot, rather than having something that's like, if A, B, and C go right, then I can do this, and then D happens and I win. It's just not a thing I tend to go for.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, similar for me is that I'm not a, when I'm playing chess, for example, I'm looking at what's ahead of me right now. I'm very rarely thinking 2, maybe 3 steps ahead, which is probably why I finish mid-table in most of the leagues that I'm in, and people like Jacob are at the forefront and at the top of them. But yeah, I think it's an interesting point, but I do think it is one area that a lot of people really, really do underestimate. So quick around the table then for everyone. One tactics card. What is the one tactics card you think has or has had the biggest impact on any games you've played? And if you have examples, it would be great. Jacob, starting with you.
The one, and I fall into this trap sometimes, is field dressing. If you want to catch me out, it's a little secret tech here. Bring field dressing, because I so often forget. Okay, that character's dazed, and I can forget about it, and then I forget they're going to bring them back, and that's a whole other problem I've got to worry about. So that's a trap I've fallen into very often.
I think the one that gets me with field dressing is remembering, and even when I'm using it myself, that you can use it and not be activated. So if you've got a player that has got the power to use it, it doesn't have to be on their turn during their activation. They can heal them or they can field dress them, and then that player can activate immediately and use all of that juicy power that they've soaked up. So, Nate, what about you?
One of my favorite cards that now has a little bit of a rival of its own in Bitter Rivals is Disarm. It's a card that will just absolutely neuter some of your opponent's more powerful characters, especially the higher threat ones like the Thors and now Scarlet Witch and Modocs of the world, and make them a lot less scary for a turn. And just being able to have priority, do a bunch of stuff on the other side of the board, and then look at the other side and be like, that Thor's going to wreck my team. Maybe we delay that for a little bit.
Yeah, it's good. I've fallen victim to it more than one occasion. Darren, what about you?
Well, seeing Jacob said field dressing, we'll have to go with all you've got. the card all you've got can be game changing, but with field dressing as well, it is just a deadly combo, and it's good reasons that they're on the restricted list.
Yeah, I do love both of them going to my Brotherhood list, and typically, I'll argue with anyone. Maybe we argue later on that Magneto is one of the best all you've got character. In terms of value for power spent, getting an extra activation from Magneto, I think is pretty crazy. Quinn, what about you?
I definitely have to say Bitter Rivals. It's one of the few tactic cards in the game that can reduce a character's defense value, and against certain characters that is such a ridiculous boon. Like having like a near immortal time reality Thanos and then going, you're at -1 die, so you're probably only blocking 1 or 2, so if I do more than 3 damage, you're actually getting hurt. I think that's just such a powerful thing. I also tend to force closer games rather than spreading out, so it has an even bigger impact than it probably would on average across most games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to finish out the roster building piece, then, and this is really aimed for those new players who are coming into the game for the first time. You can give one tidbit of information, the one little nugget, a 5-second nugget of information to a new player. I'll talk for a little bit longer just to give everybody a moment to think about it. But if somebody was to say to you, sort of elevator pitch, what's the one thing I should look at from building a roster? And because we left him last time, so it's harder for him. We'll do Quinn. We'll do Quinn first this time.
What I say is healing is really good in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, what about you?
Double and triple check your affiliation list. I don't know, when the game first came out, how many times people thought Spider-Man was an Avenger, Doc Ock was in the Cabal, and then there's just these other little interactions where, like, yes, Daredevil is a web warrior. Triple and double check your affiliations. Make sure you're building the team you think you are.
No, that's good advice. Darren, what about you?
Play the characters you want to play. Play what you want to enjoy playing. It's not all about being the best player, because there's only one best player, and at an event, if we go to an event, there's only generally one person who wins the event, and no one else does. So just go and play what you want to play. All the characters are good and viable.
Yeah, I will say that as well. We've all got tier lists of who we like and don't like, but there isn't any players, any characters in this game that are so god awful that you can't make them work in a list. Jacob, how about you?
Play games. It's as simple as that. I'd say roughly each hour of playing games is worth 10 to 20 hours of roster building. You learn so much more from actually putting the models on the table and seeing how those interactions you thought were going to work sometimes don't, or you discover something that you didn't see for hours and hours of staring at cards and models. So get them on the table, play games, and learn from your experiences. Talk to your opponents afterwards and go, what did you think of my list? What do you think of my roster? And get their feedback as well.
Yeah, and I think the games where I've learned a lot is actually when I've had other people, and anyone listening now and isn't on the Discord, isn't on TTS, isn't in any of the Facebook groups, highly recommend going there. There are so many people within all of those communities that are more than willing to help out. I remember when I first started playing, and I put a little note out on Discord, and it was, I've never played before. Is there anyone, I can't go to a game, this was during lockdown, right? I can't go to my local gaming store. Will anyone give me a game and show me how to play it? I think I had like 6 or 7 people DM me within the space of 30 minutes, like overwhelmed by the number of people that are willing to help you out when you first start, but also then sit in your games and talk through with you afterwards. Not only pick up on things during the game, but have those conversations afterwards. And that's really, for me personally, where I've questioned myself a lot more when people have said, so why did you do that? And you look back at it and you go, I don't actually know. I don't know why I took that card, or I don't know why I picked Enchantress over Angela, or whatever it may be. So, yeah, my advice would be go to the groups, go to Discord, go to the Facebook groups. There's some amazing people out there who are more than willing to help you out. So I'm just going to quickly check any live questions that have come through. Just quickly one. So yeah, we all know Reese is trying to get some insight. Bit of rivals for sure. Clock is ticking for when it is either restricted or even banned. I think banned is probably a bit of an over push with it. I think restricted maybe. Nate, what do you think?
No, I don't think it's powerful enough to hit the restricted list personally. I think it loses a lot of its potency on the D secures, and even to a degree on the B secures. It's definitely a ridiculously powerful card on any E or C, but once you spread out the crisis some, it becomes much more manageable.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Quinn, that's what you were saying, isn't it? Because you tend to pick tighter crises, it does work well for that.
Yeah, I just ignore 2/3 of the board most games.
So we did have some questions that were pre-asked. If anyone does want to ask questions, pop it into the chat. We will try and get around to them. But we did have a few here that were asked early on and from Facebook and other such things. So the first one is, how much has the game changed from when we first started playing through to the latest releases? And we'll take latest releases as the Twins and maybe Deadpool and whoever else. Nothing that has, we haven't seen cards for yet. So Nate, you were there day one, right? You were making videos on this before the game existed. You had a PDF online, you were reading the rule books, and you were building how to play and everything else. So what are your, so just repeat the question, sorry. How much has the game changed from when you started playing through to the latest releases?
First of all, please don't go watch those videos. They're very, very dated at this point. Please don't. I had somebody go back and comment, and they're chewing me out, and I was just like, dude, please watch some of my newer stuff. Like, it's better, I promise.
There will be a link to all of those in the description below.
So, in some respects, the game has not changed very much, where the core rules are still the same. There's not been any overhauls or anything like that. But so much has opened up within the core set of what they've got. So many more lists are viable now. We now have truly just control-focused lists that don't even have to try to deal damage to your opponents. But you're still playing a very interactive game, which is fantastic. We have the now more extreme aggression list with the Black Order, with Brotherhood. So the opportunities, I think, is the thing that has increased the most by far and away in the game.
Yeah, I think it is nice to see that it hasn't, we haven't seen a rule 1.2 or 1.5 or anything like that. Jacob, what about you?
I think we've seen a lot more players with a lot more understanding of the game and the fundamentals of the game. It was interesting seeing the evolution over the first kind of year. It was really a heavy secure focused game. Like, how do you win the game? Okay, you win the protocol and you pick secures and you have the secures that you like. And there was kind of the secure meta with things like I mentioned before, the Condor Wave on Gamma. That was a really strong list. Still very good, but it's been kind of, people have solved it and figured out how to play against it now. But what we've seen the switch towards more is extract-focused meta. We had the whole panic grips, hired muscle thing that went on. That's now in the past. But still, with characters like Angela and Amazing Spider-Man, there are so many things you can do on round one to secure an early lead on extracts, which then forces your opponent to extend further, to make some sort of lower odds plays in order to try and get back into the game. So just seeing that evolution from secures to extracts, and maybe we're going to cycle round and secures are going to start being really strong again, or we find a sort of a happy medium in the middle. But I've really enjoyed going on that journey and learning a lot as I've been going.
Quinn, what about you? How early did you come into the game, Quinn, by the way, just so everyone's kind of got an idea of like from when you played?
I bought my core set on launch day, so I've been here pretty much since the beginning.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, lots changed. There's been a lot of characters, including a few that I had no clue existed. Probably the best one of those is Lockjaw, because he's a teleporting space doggo. Yeah, like there have been a myriad of shifts throughout like the game's course. There have been, as Jacob said, focus on extracts, focus on secures. There was the dark days when Cabal reigned supreme and MODOK was everywhere, and now he's a little less ubiquitous. Thankfully, anyone who knows me knows I absolutely despise MODOK. If I do. But yeah, like I think probably one of my favourite releases that has happened over the course of the game has definitely been the introduction of the mutants as like the year one celebration, because it just, well, for one, it put an end to that question of when are X-Men in the game, which was posted everywhere, probably at least once a day at some point. But yeah, like just getting Magneto in the game, I'm happy with that. That's all I need.
I must admit, I was quite surprised they didn't do a Star Wars Legion-esque, here is, the second wave, which is now a new core set. I thought they may have gone down that route of building a a version 2.0, same rules, but a version 2.0 core set around the X-Men. Because I speak to so many people on Discord and in the league this time round, and even in the last league, where the introduction of the Brotherhood and X-Men was their entry point. Because I just think, 90s kids, we grew up with the cartoons, everyone knows who they all are. But Darren, what about you?
Well, thankfully, the release schedule. Because to start with, it was just ridiculous. The amount of models that were coming out each month, you couldn't keep up. But for a new game, it was amazing. It's just what you wanted. But I'd probably say the amount of content creators in this game now is blown up. So it shows how popular this game actually is. And we have some great content creators out there. Yeah,
and I think one of the things I really like about it is there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of crossover either. It's a. I go back to it. It's one of the friendliest gaming communities I've ever been part of. As we see so much collaboration and so much really good, really good content out there. So we'll jump on to the second question. So, okay. Do you own, paint all the miniatures? Well, that's going to be very region dependent. And if so, how good are you? I assume they mean how good are you at painting, not how good are you at buying miniatures. Because I think we can all testify, and our credit card statements can testify. We're all probably pretty good at buying the miniatures. But Nate, what about you?
Let's see. I own all of the miniatures that AMG has put out. They are definitely not all painted. I have sporadic releases that just do not see the paint table as quickly as others. So, like, as soon as I got the twins, they're painted and ready to go. Doctor Strange might still be primed. I was like, was there a third part of that question? I forget.
How good are you? That's very subjective,
I like
isn't
my
it?
tabletop standard. I am not going to enter. I might enter the worthy competition that AMG is doing because they're just encouraging people to slap paint on a model, and they're judging you versus your previous entries, which I think is such a fantastic way to go about this. So I'll do that, but I'm not going to win any prizes at like a competitive level painting thing. I get my base coats on, I do a little bit of highlighting and shading, and call it a day.
Nice. Darren, what about you? We can see Darren's gaming table behind him, so he's giving himself away a little bit there.
Yeah, I own basically everything. I think I'm 3 or 4 boxes short of owning everything. I've not got everything painted. At the start of lockdown, I was like, that meme with like, he's going to paint all his models, and Morgan Freeman's like, no, he didn't. that is me.
Yeah.
I just keep buying them, but I don't paint them. Painting, I'm pretty good, I'd say. I'm not going to win no Golden Demon, but I'm happy with what I've achieved normally.
Good. Jacob, how about you?
I think I'm 6 boxes off complete, so that's the vast majority. I do like to paint. I don't have a lot of time for painting, and I think I'm decent. I found out over lockdown that Sarastro is local to me, so I'm going to be
wow
for some tips after. So we'll do a sort of a swap. So I'll give him some gaming tips, and he can give me some painting tips.
I mean, I think Sarastro has probably helped everyone on this call at some point, right? It's amazing the influx of repaints of Murdoch over this last week since he released his somewhat belated, I think, but released his Murdoch video. That yellow NMM style is really good. And Quinn, last but by no means least, how about you?
I have everything as long as we're ignoring Cable and Deadpool because they are sadly stuck on a boat. In terms of painting, I'd say I'm probably like a high tabletop standard, and I do try and like push myself with every miniature I paint, which isn't many because I'm incredibly lazy and have like half the range set in front of me in various stages of uncompletion.
Yeah,
I try and push myself with different techniques whenever I can. Non-metallic metal is the next thing for me to tackle, which is absolutely terrifying because it looks really hard and it's scary.
I think painting though is one of those things, isn't it? Where I mean, I had a 20-year hiatus from tabletop gaming and hobbying of any sort, and it is one of those things that once you've learned those techniques and advance yourself, it does. You can see even over the space of a year. If I look back at some Star Wars Legion miniatures that I painted, and I was picked Darth Vader for example. I know when Star Wars, I know this is Marvel, but and then I've just been collecting Imperial Assault, and I painted up Darth Vader. And okay, they're slightly different scale. One's 32, one's 28, but even just like a year or so apart, you hold them side by side, and you can see the difference it's made by putting that time and effort into doing it. And I say all that, and I literally have a shelf behind me filled with boxes and miniatures that are completely unpainted, because I buy them, I build them, I prime them, and I think, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then life happens, or I play a game on TTS or whatever it is, but I've got my little have to paint pile behind me, because I've got a tournament coming up in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of the thing now that's spurring me on to do it. Okay, so question number 5. Just quickly check the live. So let's have a quick look back here. So a comment, I think this is aimed at Nate. I have seen those videos. I was pre-day release one into this game and watched Gamers Guild since. My son even watched his vids. Brilliant. I will say your standard of video making has come on significantly, Nate, from those first few. And then quick question here. So do any of you do conversions? I have a Modok conversion that is Jean Grey, Phoenix, and a Nick Fury with the cube replacement for the Red Skull, for example. I also have the originals as well. So yeah, do any of you guys do any conversions or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of conversions. From my previous hobby games, I used to be one of the things I enjoyed the most, magnetizing stuff, pinning stuff. Yeah, I've got a Spider-Man hanging off a lamppost. I've got a second Red Skull I got her painted up as Spider-Man Noir with the Rubik's Cube.
Ah, nice.
My Beast is upside down and reading a rules book. So nothing earth-shattering. I think I've seen that Jean Grey Phoenix Modok, and it's really, really good. I think it's using the Hero Clicks Phoenix Force.
Yes, I do remember it now. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
And I've actually got a spare one of them in my loft. So when I get around to doing a Phoenixy type thing, then I might get butchered for that as well. Inspired very much by that.
Cool. Well, we've just had a live question through, which is exactly the same as one of our pre-questions, so we'll get onto that in a second. But anybody else on the conversions front? Anybody else like to mix it up, make characters that aren't yet in the game, or?
The closest thing I come to with that is usually just doing a bit of reposing. Like my Ghost Spider is sliding off a bin.
Brilliant. Yeah, I tend to not, unless I was going to buy a second character, I wouldn't convert. It's in my head. It's like the little sort of ADHD bit where everything needs to be lined up and as it is and things. But yeah, I think I don't change characters to look like somebody else. But yeah, similar, a bit of reposing, and especially when you get onto some of the characters nowadays. You know, I thought Enchantress and Storm were a little bit fiddly, and then you start building Wanda, and you realise that we hadn't seen Fiddly and Fragile until she came along. But Nate, Daz, any of you guys?
I very much along more of just rebasing some of my characters. So I have like my Gwen is kind of jumping off a trash can that's getting tipped over, and Quicksilver, I have his base kind of exploding up from the metal one. I just took a spare metal base because we all have probably about 20 spare bases sitting around our houses. Just cut one of those up and made it look like that was exploding. So small things, nothing crazy. I did model Loki afoot. That was great.
Cool. Daz, you were going to say?
Yeah, I've done like Doc Ock. I've heated up his tentacles and bent them round so he was standing up on two of them up high. And Spider-Man, I got like it's like a beam shot basically, and it's going through and it hits a trash can, and he's jumping over backwards over it. Little
Oh, that's
things
really
like that.
cool. Yeah.
But I haven't done so much recently. But originally I did start to, but haven't done now.
I think that the most I've had to do of late is Quicksilver was missing a back, and I couldn't wait, so I green stuffed and made a back for Quicksilver, which I was fairly happy with. It's it's only his back, so you don't really ever see it anyway. So, Mitch Cowan says that's the one. So yeah, I think Jacob, the one that you mentioned there with the Murdoch and the Phoenix is that one there. So a question from Fozzie is, so who do you all want to see in the game? So which character do we want to see come into the game? And I suppose let's give everyone two choices, right? Let's give everyone what is the realistic character you would like to see in the game that could realistically be portrayed, and then just out there thinking the one that you would absolutely love. So Nate, what about you?
So probably the more realistic of my two is Doctor Doom. As soon as the Fantastic Four come, I'm expecting either an Ultimate Encounter box with some Doom bots or just something Doctor Doom. But the character that I really want, and it's become a lot more realistic thanks to Marvel Champions releasing him in July, is Flash Thompson, Agent Venom.
Ah, okay. Daz, what about you?
I'd love to see Mojo. I've done from the old cartoon and stuff.
Yeah.
He was in that as well, so a lot of you might remember him from that. And probably might be realistic, but probably not be Galactus.
Galactus, yeah, he was on my 7+ threat list characters I'd like to see in the game. The size maybe an issue, like 30 foot tall,
Maybe
but
an Ultimate Encounter, but
yeah. Quinn, what about you?
In terms of realistic releases, now that I can't say Doom because Nate got there first, I mean, I have to name drop the Allfather, right? Odin, second Asgard leader. I want it. 8th threat Odin, gimme. In terms of unrealistic or something that I think might be a little bit later down the line, I mean, I already mentioned the fact that I love Magneto, so why would I not say Onslaught? Because he's just a big Magneto.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy. That would be pretty crazy indeed. And then last but by no means least, Jacob, what about you?
So I've been a huge fan of Emma Frost, and I'm pretty certain we're going to get her before too long. The Dark Illuminati is mentioned in the original rules book, so they're coming at some point, and she's going to be there. So I'm just patient and waiting, but that's definitely my number one. For a kind of more random one, I like a Vampire Jubilee. I think that would be fun.
Okay, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. Well, as I mentioned,
What have you thought of, Quinn?
You mentioned vampire, and my brain immediately went to, oh yeah, Dracula's a Marvel character. I want him.
Yep.
I think we're more likely to see Blade than Dracula, but yeah, he's yeah. I mean, I think you guys have picked some great ones. I think Doom was, Doom's on my list of ones I'd like to see. It makes sense, right? Fantastic Four is coming as a movie at some point in the MCU. I know they're not tied, but really they are becoming. The releases are becoming more and more in sync with what we're seeing from the movies. I would personally really like to see an X-23. I think that could be really cool to see. And then Apocalypse. I really want to see Apocalypse and Four Horsemen. Jacob, we spoke when we were doing our quick test call, didn't we? But my idea is like, you make him 7th threat, but his ability is he can take any 4 characters and they're in affiliation with him. It'd be crazy super overpowered, but yeah, that's the one. That's the one for me. Let's have a quick look at the chat. So Odin, he better be 7th threat. Namor, Black Swan for Black Order. Namor's another one here. Silver Surfer, that's pretty cool. Kitty Pryde.
I can see Namor being in a box with Emma Frost, actually. They're both in the Dark Illuminati. So
Yes.
they're from Phoenix 5 as well.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and then Kitty Pryde and Lockheed. So yeah, Warlock, Adam Warlock, somebody's put. So yeah, it's another high threat character. So, and I think that's the nice thing, isn't it? Is that they're never going to run out. Like they've already released so many obscure ones that, and there's still so many characters that are known and loved that haven't yet been released. That it's endless. I think people can be excited. I think about what's coming.
Well, I think they showed that right from the start as well, didn't they? By releasing MODOK.
Yeah.
Because you either knew who MODOK was or you had no idea who he was.
And now you either don't know who he is or you hate him. Playing against, everyone loves to play a MODOK. So last question then for the pre-selected ones is interesting one. What's the main difference between competitive and casual play? I think I'll word that one first a little bit different. So competitive. Do we think there is a real competitive scene in Marvel Crisis Protocol at the moment? Obviously, it's been, in-person competitive has been stupid because of lockdown and everything else. But, I look at what's happening on TTS and I'm not going to say what I would say, but yeah, Quinn, what about you?
I think at the moment there definitely is, and a big part of that has been the leagues over like the course of lockdown. We've seen some like really good players emerge through that. The one that springs to mind is Cookie and also #DodgePat, which I'm so far I've been successful with. Haven't been paired against in round one. It's great, or Matt. But yeah, I think there's definitely a competitive scene that has emerged, and I'm fairly confident that it will continue through out of lockdown and into IRL space.
Yeah, Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, I think there is competitive, but what I really like about it is the way the league has been structured. Is it's welcoming and open, and if it's your third game of Crisis Protocol, you can still enter, and it's not exclusive. It's inclusive. So I think that the competitive scene does exist, and I think it is in a really good place at the minute in terms of it's not being gate kept in entry. I think that if you're prepared to work at it, then you can get there without maybe as much effort as some other games.
Yeah. Daz, what about yourself?
Yeah, totally agree. Norbert's done a great job, and the other Illuminati keeping us all busy over the last 12 months or so, and it really has, I think, kept the game quite competitive.
Yeah, I agree. And a shout out, by the way, to the whole guys that run that. I think the guys that are running the TTS, from building it to making it playable through to then what's organised on there, it really, really has kept the game alive, I think, for a lot of people. Nate, how have you guys found it? Obviously, the only one of the panel today from the other side of the pond, where I think you maybe not had all the same restrictions all at the same time as we had. How has it been over there? Has there been many in-person playing? Have places been open? Have you been able to roll some dice, or has it pretty much been locked down?
So we've definitely been able to roll some dice, but there are still plenty of restrictions from keeping any of the larger events from happening. All of the conventions, obviously, over the past year have got pushed back, etc. So I definitely think right now that there is a competitive scene, but right now that scene is pretty restricted to the online space. But we are, I think, once we start to get into the fall and past that, as more and more people are getting vaccinated, we'll begin to see the normal events taking place.
Yeah, I think has Norbert organised one in London. I think I saw. We've got one coming up in London, haven't we? In the not too
London GT.
Yeah,
end of September.
Yeah, it'll be funny. People trying to look at the shadows under their 3 range counter, trying to work out whether or not they're in range. So I think we all agree, and I by the way would wholeheartedly agree that not only is there a competitive scene, it's one of the friendliest, one of the most welcoming, and one that has probably the least barriers to entry of any hobbying community that I've played with. So what do we think then is the main difference? Is there a difference? Do we see, is the step up to the likes of, Cookie and some of the other guys that are at the absolute sort of top of the game at the moment versus the more casual player? Is there a big difference, do we think?
Yes.
Daz? Yeah?
Yeah, I do personally. I actually went to an event last weekend, and I didn't know what the event was going to be like. I got there and like chatted, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we've played some games on TTS and stuff as well." And they obviously they probably only played like maybe 10 games, and like Cookie can play that in a week.
Yeah.
Some of these other top players, and like Jacob said, putting in reps is a big thing in this game. It's the same with all miniature games though. You put in the reps and you get the rewards normally.
Yeah. Jacob, what about you? What do you think's the sort of biggest difference between casual and competitive at the moment?
I think it's the diversity of characters. I mean, if you look at some of the stats I put out on what's being taken, there's certain characters who come up time and time and time again in the competitive scene because they're probably the most efficient characters. And there's not a massive gap between the most efficient and the middle ground, or I wouldn't say the least efficient. There's some which are a little bit further down, but 90% of models fall in a very narrow band, and we're really talking about very marginal gains as to why those models have risen to the top. So I'm not saying that these are must-takes, but competitive players look for every minor advantage they can get. Whereas other players in the casuals, you might take characters, someone like Gamora. There's nothing wrong with Gamora. She's just not quite up there with where competitive players want their characters to be. Having said that, she can still absolutely win you a game because she's got some great abilities and some great attacks, and she can dominate the table if the dice go your way. So I think it's largely around character selection. I think when I'm playing a casual game, I'll just, this is fine, I'll put that character with that character. Played in the Infinity War League, and I had Hulk, She-Hulk, and a third character to make points. That was my tip.
Brilliant.
So it's just, we're just doing something fun. I think it's mostly around character selection is, I think, the biggest difference.
Yeah, Nate, what about you?
Yeah, I think part of mine folds into what everybody else has already said. It's just kind of a mindset difference where competitive players, you're looking for those small advantages, whereas in a casual setting, not only is it maybe you're looking for narrative play, but also maybe the decisions you're making in the game where it's like, man, like if I'm trying to win here, Spider-Man runs away and like that's the end of it, or Hulk runs away. But when you're playing a little bit more casual, you're like, Hulk's got 17 damage on him, and I could just absolutely wreck a couple of models here. Hulk smash. And so you kind of go through these different lines of thought. I think that's one of the things that separates the two crowds a little bit.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I get drawn into, and having played a couple of people on here, I know they do as well. You see a target, they're a little bit weak, and you think, yeah, I'm gonna, and you get sidetracked by, reenacting the comics and the movies and everything that we've watched and read and loved. Quinn, what about you? What's the sort of big difference for you?
On like a personal level, I don't really differentiate between competitive and casual. My general philosophy is that anytime I'm playing a game, I am playing it to try and like better myself and play to the best of my ability. But in the same vein, I'm not like a cutthroat. I'm going to do this, yeah, thing. I also like don't like limiting myself in terms of what I play and what I don't. Especially from my Guild Ball days. I'm more of an all-rounder. I like to play everything. I like to know how everything works, and that's generally my way of learning things, rather than like hyper-focusing on one specific list and like perfecting it. I like to know what every character can do and what every affiliation can do through personal experience, which means that a lot of the time I don't kind of involve myself in the narrowing of character selection and going, oh yes, I'm taking this one because it's the best one. I would rather understand what everyone does and then just go from there and use that knowledge to counter whatever my opponent's doing. And I think the way you do that is just take every game as it comes, and also I think on just a play-by-play basis, you kind of judge what like your opponents like and what they would like to get out of a game, and you kind of try and measure that up with what you're trying to achieve yourself. So if someone's never played a game before, I'm not gonna pull out whatever the top list at the moment is. Let's say it was, hired muscle Asgard. I'm not gonna pull that out and then use that on them because, funnily enough, I want people to keep playing the game.
No, smash them into the ground and make them cry. No, that's the...
No, you have to follow Machiavelli here. You don't hurt someone so much that they, you hurt someone to the point where you've beaten them and then you lift them up as your friend, or you just completely destroy them. There is no middle ground.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I think, I mean, I pretty much agree with what everyone said there. I think it's the biggest difference for me is it's in the little details. It's seeing something that's happening in the game or being able to recognize what your opponent's doing. The one thing I fall down with a lot, because there were just characters that I tried playing once, did not enjoy them, so never played them again. They're typically the ones that are sat on my shelf, and I'm looking at Ant-Man going, I'm never going to play you in real life. Why am I ever going to paint you? But with that, I don't then learn. So I get caught out by characters that I don't understand, or tactics cards that I don't use and don't really understand their full potential and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I think it's a great competitive scene. I think we're very, very fortunate to have had some great people on board, kind of pushing this community forward and creating all the events and building TTS to be as good as it is. Just some last second ones here. So I think we've had some more suggestions. So Silver Surfer, like we had before. Beta Ray Bill, that'd be pretty cool for characters we'd like to see. TTS changes things dramatically. You can get 10 games in a week far more easily than in person. Yeah, completely agree with that as well. I mean, there's no setup time either, is there? You drop a little card into a slot now and you're ready to play your game. And I think a comment here on the difference of casual versus competitive around roster building and crunching the numbers and looking at what's the most optimal. And I think, yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Well, guys, we're coming up to the hour mark, so I think we'll sort of start to wind it down there. Is there anything else anyone wants to cover off? Are there any other sort of points you'd like to get out there for any new players that are coming into the game?
One thing I'll say, especially since we just came off of the topic of competitive and casual, that I love that Atomic Mass Games, especially if you're newer and you don't know this yet, Atomic Mass Games is really encouraging the narrative side of play with all of their own organized play, whether that's in their kits or events or whatever else they're putting out. You get all of the participation prizes that everybody else is going to get. It's not if you don't win any game, you lose out on anything, or if you win all your games, you're not getting anything extra, which I think is a great mentality to kind of build the narrative universe that Marvel kind of already is.
Yeah, I think I've only ever played one of them, and it is something I would like to go back and take a look at some of the sort of organised play pieces, because I think there is some, very thematic, aren't there? And there's quite a few out there now, I think, isn't there? There's the sort of, 5 or 6 different ones with ultimate encounters and organised play and stuff, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, there's 3 ultimate encounters. Somebody correct me when I go awry. And then we've got the Killmonger Vibranium Heist. Next month we get Magneto in his special event. I'm not sure if it's a 2v1 ultimate encounter or not. But then we're also getting the Symbiote, which should be like a free-for-all 4-player, which is something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, 4 players. I've been looking at, and I've been speaking to some of the other accusers on Discord around 4 players. Like, is it viable? Is it possible? And it's really weird. Some people were like, absolutely not at all. Don't do it. And other people are like, no, it could work. Jacob, what about you? Any final thoughts for everybody out there?
So if you're a new player, just get talking to people. We've said it before, but join in with the community. There's a bunch of really good podcasts out there. Some of them are aimed more towards new players, some are more on the competitive end, some are more sort of lore focused. Find one that you like. There's a number of good blogs out there as well, and good YouTube channels. There's loads of content out there, so if you want to immerse yourself, you totally can.
Absolutely. Darren, what about you?
Yeah, I would probably say try and find yourself a gaming group local if possible, but throw ideas off of them lists and ask them what they think about your list.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd second that and say, don't be afraid to publish it in the groups, especially the Facebook groups, especially Discord. It is very much a non-toxic area, I've found from personal experience. And Quinn, what about you?
I'd just say dive in as much as you want to, play however or whatever you want to play. There's no right way to play this game, and just do what you enjoy most. If you want to, recreate, Infinity War or whatever, go for it. Or if you want to, you really want to dive into the competitive scene, you'll definitely find resources out there to help you do that. And it's just a matter of reaching out and finding them, really.
Yeah, we're not far off the airport scene, are we? With the announcer, we've got Falcon-esque. It's Captain America, but we've got War Machine, so we're not far off being able to recreate that airport scene. So it should be really, really cool. Well, to you four guys, thank you so much for taking the time, for joining me tonight. Hopefully everyone who has watched it has really, really enjoyed it. But just quickly around the table, where can everybody find you? So Jacob, where can people find you?
So you can find my blog at xavier-protocols.com, and you can find our podcast as the Danger Room podcast on all good podcatchers.
Excellent. Nate, how about you?
I'm just over on YouTube. If you search Gamers Guild, Marvel Crisis Protocol should have plenty of random MCP goodness pop up.
Check out the old videos. They're amazing.
Don't do it.
Excellent. Darren, how about you?
I'm just on the Discord. I'm the Wargaming Dad on all the MCP Discords, basically. You can just you can just message me on there about anything you want to, and I'm happy to chat MCP.
Perfect. And Quinn?
You can find me on various places around the internet. I don't have a fancy internet name like everyone else. I'm just me. So, if you ever want to reach out, just look for Quinn. It's probably only one of me.
Excellent. Well, once again, guys, there'll be links to the Discord, there'll be links to the various Facebook groups, there'll be links over to Xavier Protocols, over to the Danger Room, and over to the Gamers Guild, all down in the description below. Once I actually finish this, and then go and put all of those details in the description below as well. So, guys, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully everyone has enjoyed this and it's been useful. I will just say one last thing, because I did mention at the beginning of the video, so for those that have stayed till this point, we are starting a brand new giveaway. So from the 1st of June, we'll be giving away one of whatever is released for that month, and it's AMG and Asmodee. So depending on where you live in the world, it could be MODOK, it could be whatever's coming out in 2 months' time, who knows. But to be eligible for that giveaway, all you need to do is be a subscriber, leave a comment down in the comment section below on this or any of the videos from the month, and then I'll pick out one lucky winner at the end of the month. So guys, wave. So Mitch is giving a wave to the Wargaming Dad. There we go. So that's what everybody knows you as, is the Wargaming Dad. I had to look up your real name because I didn't know who you were. But once again, guys, thank you to everyone that's joined us. We've got Jacob from Xavier Protocols, we've got Nate from the Gamers Guild, we've got Daz the Wargaming Dad, and he's going to be now known as Just Quinn. He will forever be known as Just Quinn.
We should start calling him the Mighty Quinn, so he's got his own song.
This is true. This is very, very true. Yeah, absolutely.
On a Discord name update immediately.
You can also call me the Grand Hierophant of Grendel if you really want.
Has someone been playing Dungeons and Dragons? Excellent. So for everyone on the stream, as always, guys, stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.